All right, so we will continue to try to talk about happiness, right? But there's still a lot of good stuff came up. The trust thing, flow, I think we kind of got through. But measuring trust was something I wanted to kind of come back to. Um, but I suppose I should probably start with this. So this didn't work out. So Eric Lander has just resigned. Here's the story. Um, right, so he's MIT, I guess partly at Harvard in some way, but I recall him being at MIT. It's, the genome sort of stuff, I think, a lot of biology stuff. Like, so he's pretty famous scientifically and has been this sort of cabinet level person for science for Biden, which is so that's sort of a good thing, right? Was to have this that sort of character, but basically he's a total asshole. So that has sort of you know and it's not like people didn't know, right? So this is from a year ago, and let me just accentuate the authors here. Oh my god, oh my god. Um, I don't know if they're. Oh yeah, no, no. What stories by? Well, that is. I don't think that part of the site is working. Maybe. Oh, okay. So maybe I don't understand what that is. I think it's a. Is it a group? Yes, must be a group. Okay, okay, that helps because it did seem kind of strange. Okay, um, I'm guessing the 500 is reasonably accurate though. Like, anyway. But this is probably, a Scientific American. It's like, and it was mostly about him uh, being, I think, well, there are a few things, but a lot of it is just, being biased. People saying he's ego without end, da da da, all this sort of stuff. CRISPR, so CRISPR is the big thing, doing strange things to mice or whatever. I haven't heard much about CRISPR recently. What's CRISPR? Oh, okay. He apologized. He toasted James Watson, who is well understood now to have been to be not such a great human being, and this whole again, this is the ancient sort of story, right? But of course, Rosalind Franklin. So women, of course, have just been pushed out of everything, and then there's of course the whole thing of just there's one man, the great man theory, right? So there's just one or two maybe. Um, I've certainly been in groups where the effort is to minimize the number of people on a paper. This is just a nice little detail. These are people who want to win Nobel Prizes one day, if you ask them. Or even, I think actually, I remember discovering that Nobel Prize wasn't the biggest goal for this one person. It was actually being in a movie, right? Movies being made about you. That's Nobel, fine, but like that's maybe da da da. But if they start to tell the story of you, that was good. That was like scorching ego kind of thing. I'm like, just like, oh my god. I'm beginning to comprehend. But anyway, so that whole problem. So we've got the world of these people. He is very influential. This is pretty shocking. I don't know if you can see this, but this is. I don't know if I've seen one as ridiculous as this. You can see there's a lot of it's a lot of gene stuff, and I don't know. It does seem to be a lot of the stuff that I try to push towards people, in computational social science, and a number of my colleagues have done this, and I think we're trying to do it the right way. But it's like just sequencing, like basic tools and all these big kind of platforms and so on. Like this is a viewer, for example. Like we've made Story Wrangler and Hedonometer and these things. So scientifically, this is sort of good stuff. But this is really kind of bonkers. This paper, I mean, it's amazing. It just took off, and I sort of stayed out of biology because it's just there's so many people and whatever, and it wasn't as fundamentally interesting. This is just a personal thing, but I do find, as a result, like the abstract's just inscrutable, right? Like. And nature and science, because it's a big place you want to be, but it's all garbage. But they have these sort of rules, like titles should be, understandable by the layperson, da, 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 da. Except if it's a really special thing. And you go through those things, and it's just like alpha, mouse, snorkel, Sonic the Hedgehog, and then like a trumpet, and you're like, okay, and that's the title. So it's like game over. Anyway, then you realize there are a lot of ads for mice in those journals, so it's like, all makes sense. It's like, buy some mice with 3 ears, etc. Anyway, so this is just, it's not great. And I guess I was going to point out an old colleague, a friend of mine, the somewhat hilariously irascible Leo Pacta. We were graduate students together, and he's a superstar. He's at Caltech. One of the problematic things about places like MIT and Caltech is that many of the professors were graduate students there, which is not how it should work, right? Like that's not healthy. Yeah. So it doesn't happen at other places, and we have Aaron Clauset. Maybe I should talk about this one. Studied this and gave a talk actually at the start of last year. Maybe you saw that, but on who hires whom and all this sort of stuff. Anyway, so but Leo's great. He likes people on fire. And one of his big things has been, going at the COVID, anti-sort of COVID, what are they, anti-vax, whatever. There's a couple of famous professors at Stanford in particular. Anyway, so so this is just his thread. I just thought I'd show, but it's like, he's basically feels sadness. Leo has a pretty, well-read blog, and he's criticized many of his actions, like this Heroes of CRISPR, again, an example that left out women in particular, the toasting of Watson. He has a critique here, like, that his research is a bit problematic, but basically, this is just, but the thing is, it is sad, but we just shouldn't do this. Like, anyway, I wanted to bring it up. It is so frustrating. Okay. All right, people. Sorry. Okay, so trope for the day, 100 Years of Solitude, right? So I don't know if you've looked this up, but you have a whole festival of, here it is. 100 Years of Solitude is just like it's got its own entry. Did you check this out? No. Yeah, so good material. So let's have a little look at this because, so it's in the description as usual, right? There's a couple of things, right? So this is a trope, awesomely deep and so goddamn hard to understand. So this is right? This is a whole box of stuff here, mind screw, right, with a bunch of examples, as usual, and talks about nonlinear. So that's a trope. Every generation having the same few names is like a trope. There's a couple of things. There's a couple of real things happen here. Sir Francis Drake on the Golden Hind sailing around, being English. My God. I once did a class project on Sir Francis Drake when I was a kid, and I made a diorama, and it was like a map of the world, cut out of cardboard and whatever, and I painted it and all this sort of stuff. And at the bottom, I wrote my report, and I made it into a little box and a scroll. You had to scroll through the report. So it goes on the wall, and you could, like, read it. If someone had just appeared out of a thing and said, iPads, or whatever, I was like, oh. I don't know, a little scroll. Yeah. It is possibly sitting in a shearing shed right now with boxes of things I made. Or it's been lit on fire. So, that's another possibility. So anyway, let's just scan through. Lots of stuff. Things like creepy uncle, creepy twins, 17, also good. There's a 17 here. Creepy child, I don't know if you've looked through tropes, but they try to do spoiler things. And I'm just gonna. So downer ending, by the way. This is not great. I'm just gonna. It's basically the whole thing goes to pieces, right? It's 100 years. In the end, there's a tornado comes through and it's gone. The lineage is gone. I mean, it's a way to end a story. So anyway, so lots of things. Now, I guess my challenge here is when we have this list. All right, it's put together. It's crowdsourced. This would be insanely impossible to do otherwise, right? So we have this big substrate of TV tropes in this case. Some of these are events. Some of these are things that kind of last maybe for longer, right? So this is Dying Town. But, like this kind of idea I have of a tropogram, like here's the narrative time of the novel, which could jump, that's complicated too. But dying town, is that like, it's probably not from the start, right? It's probably some, so you can imagine like trope dying town like operates here. Maybe it has a resurgence, so it's like true here and true here again. But that would be like, where are all these things, because they're just alphabetically ordered. Like, what's the, I mean, all of this is towards the sort of grand challenge, like feed in a story and pop out a tropogram thing. It tells you what's going on at which point, and sort of here's the plot architecture through. What I think plot architecture we could do, at least computationally, is a network of interactions, a temporally evolving network of interactions between characters, events, and environments. It's possible. Like, it's sort of plausible you could pull that out. Because then you'd have this temporally evolving network. We could sort of distill that, find the sort of essence of it, and then compare it to a billion others. So what are the fun? Because we don't know what the plots are. We don't know what I mean, we have books about them. We write about them. There are 25 essential plots. I showed some in Parks, 7 fundamental plots, blah, blah, blah. But this would be a way of kind of getting at that temporal mechanic. Anyway, yeah, exactly what it says on the tin. So this is just it's a small thing, but it's like, this is actually how, this is good for science, right? This is what scientific title should be, instead of questions, for example. Like, it's like clickbait. Exactly what it says in tin. The title is like, well, I mean, it doesn't tell you everything. It's pretty good. Anyway, there's a lot. Generation Xerox was a good one. I hadn't seen that before, but it's basically replicate. It gets a little complicated because the twins get switched. The names inform how they behave, like the names of the families. There's just a lot. Now, the titles of these things are all, they're jokey, so they're not always, I don't know if we could say loads and loads of characters. Lots of things have that. Loners are freaks. That's a good one. Loners are freaks. Loners are wise people. There are a bunch of ways that could split, right? Loners are, dangerous, right? It could be the kind of lone wolf. Mark to die. Ooh, good. Oh God. This one, right? They have, yeah. It makes some easy assassination talks. Which reminds me of Bummer of a Birthmark. How? Far Side, does Far Side register at all? It used to be that scientists had Far Side cartoons on everything. Like if you walked into a lab space somewhere, that was the thing. People had it, like there'd be stuff about office hours and there'd be a bunch of little jokey Far Side things. It's XKCD, yeah, because it's like the age of information, right? It's for the swap. I know I talk about it now, but it was just super dominant. Anyway, yeah. Everyone has replicated that one. Ooh, what's that one? I don't understand it. Anyway, it's a good one. He's a very it's like organismal biology. It's like a bit too big. There's some cell amoebas and things in his stuff, but usually it's like, yeah. Okay, so you got a nice big, I mean, it's just there, right? You don't have to like pull them together or something. That work of literature has its own festival. Okay, so that's TV Tropes has this kind of mixture of things, right? That's a different thing. Measuring trust, right? So there are places like Trustpilot. Do you even trust a thing that's called Trustpilot? I mean, it's tricky, right? So it's a big company, I think. Okay, good. Let's look at that. I'm sort of bringing this up because I'm still trying to get my Kindle unlocked. So I've got all these books that I can't do it with, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. Anyway, this is something you can buy, but I don't know if it's good. Well, look at these ratings though. 508, excellent. And then you want to go and do, I think I did this, Like, because you imagine early on, this was great. Very early on, it was good because people put little honest reviews on their little website, which they made by hand with, fish. And Yeah. There's this thing. I don't even know what this thing is. Is this website? Yeah, it says, I mean, I don't know if this is true. Contains malware. I don't, so now it's a disaster, right? Like, God damn it. Okay, so I'm putting in Trustpilot. Oh, it's a mess though, isn't it? Oh, I guess it's this.
4 stars.
This feels real. Yeah, I was being paid to do 1 star for that one. If I just got confused, right? I was doing my 1 stars in the morning, and now my 5 stars. Very good and pleased. I mean, it's an arms race, right? So to start with, this is kind of good. Like Amazon was like, this kind of people put little things, and they started to get rewards, and then people, advertisers would target people. If you were a top 1,000 reviewer, suddenly boxes of things would appear at your house. Like, just want you to review it. Then people started to put like, I received a free version of this. It did not affect my review. There was a sort of a spate of that, and it was unbelievable. But you can see they're so fake. They're like, I bought this for my husband. That is like that, or my wife. There's these versions of these things, or my son, and you're like, God, this is it's good. It's a good hook. It's a good hook.
Our friend Scott has 2 reviews and is verified.
That's verified. Oh man, I mean, I just.
And easy to navigate and use is one of the reviews. So that's someone complaining about trying to review some other business and not being able to.
Yeah.
Wait, what is this one by Elizabeth King?
This is. Oh, this is awful. So this is just a disaster. I mean, Yelp, is sort of a disaster. I mean, like, right? I mean, you want your genuine friends to like tell you, it still comes back to like, do you actually, do you trust people? And of course, all of this is eroding trust, like, because you can't just by default believe anything anyone says because there could be a bot or anyway. So there, it is a big company. I mean, I think Pew does its trust stuff. I mean, I just want to sort of bring this up a little more because how do you measure trust? It's so the traditional thing is to ask people, and as we've talked about, like that's problematic. It's fine. I mean, you got to do it, but you've got to be careful because it's going to, people are going to respond in complicated ways based on how they feel about themselves and you and the question that will push it. Guilt, shame, greed, all these things. This is 5 years. Yeah, Pew does their little things. Has a person ever called you up and said, "I'm from Pew. I want to ask a question"? Well, who do they talk to? Yeah, there's a huge problem. Social science kind of surveys for a while there. It's still a mess, but just that. I mean, we're still in it. This transition to the internet, and of course to phones, like just to no one having landlines anymore. There was a period where everyone just random digit dialing was a big story. So, and it was to landlines for a long time. It's like the white pages or the yellow pages, these ancient objects, right? Which I was reflecting on with my wife the other day. You would get a thing on the doorstep that would list everyone's phone number and their address. It's just not right. That doesn't sit well with your generation. It's messed up. You guys don't answer the door. Either do I. I think I'm totally on board with it. Okay, if I don't recognize the numbers, no way I'm going to answer.
It goes the other way too. Like on Snapchat, you can share your location at all times with everyone, and
right.
There are lots of my friends that do that, and I'm like, wow, that's insane.
Right.
No one needs.
I've observed that I have a bifurcation in my children. Yes.
Yeah, but like there's actually you can like choose exactly to share your location with versus like every person.
It was incredible when I first saw it because I saw like close up, but then they went out and they went out and they went out to the world basically, and it's like, yeah. And
the thing is it's opt out, so it's not like you sign up for Snapchat.
Yes, no, so it's very important. What's the default?
Yeah, so it's like in that case, if you don't know, you don't know.
That you're being tracked. So it's true. Yeah. So some people, obviously, this is very perilous, right? You would not do anything like this. And many years ago, when we did the Small World experiment, we did have a sort of proposal go through them after it, and we did some work on it. But one of the things we talked about is like, okay, it's clear you could kind of find anyone or anything through collective social, right? And it's going to be about incentives, like, if you pay people lots of money or whatever, how do you make something that's not gameable? And the red balloons thing was an example of something that's not gameable. But we really stopped because we couldn't think of any way. I mean, when we started to think about all these bad, like stalkers, all these sort of bad things that could happen, and it just seemed limitless, right? Like, what just happened recently? Not the metaverse, but maybe. It just boggles my mind. Like, okay, we're going to make this new social environment, and it gets filled with, bad people straight away because they're like, anyway, yeah. That was shocking when I saw that. And years ago, this is a long time ago, but Unix systems all around the world were just open, right? And Windows was like this early on too, because again, it was sort of just like, this is optimistic. The internet's going to change everything. We're all good. People are good. Bill Gates has this amazing statement that it was actually an interview with Terry Pratchett for GQ. It's kind of wild thing, 1995. Did I show you this? I mean, it's just amazing, right? It's just like, Bill Gates is like, it's fine. People will be exactly this. Like, you'll be able to trust them. They'll be experts. You'll be able to check their credentials, and collectively it'll be good. But I mean, we do have Wikipedia, which is, not disastrous, right? Which is amazing. Anyway, so yeah, what was it? It's so just a really hard thing to measure. But okay, back to the Unix system thing. So everything was open. I'll tell you a little anecdote. This is weird. So I was at Melbourne Uni. I did my undergrad and my master's there, and I finished my master's and basically on a Friday, handed in and flew to the US, right? And then found out my advisor was no longer there. Anyway, so the more I think about it, which I try not to, it's pretty terrible. But anyway, so I'm walking along this corridor. So this is MIT. I'm walking along this corridor, and this guy comes walking talking with a friend, walks past me. I know this guy, right? I know this guy. Like, he was at Melbourne Uni. So I'm like, oh my God, I know a human. Like, I didn't. And I'm like, we played volleyball together. I'd had another knee operation because of some terrible game of volleyball we played together. Like, I crawled off the thing and she comes up, they come over like, you all right? And I said, I'm gonna have an operation tomorrow. It was 2 days later. Anyway, stupid knees. So he just walked straight past me. This guy just walked straight past me. This is connected to Unix. It's weird. And I was like, I sort of got myself in front of him again or something. He did not recognize me at all. And I was like, this is really totally messing with me. And so then I start to think he's a twin. I go for the trope, right? I think I went into one of the, graduate rooms or whatever, or common rooms or something, where there were pictures. There were, this is before the web, so sort of the web existed, but the pictures of everyone, they sort of would do this. And their names. And I think maybe that's what I found. I think I saw that, and it had a different first name to this other person. So there was this is a terrible, I can't believe this word exists, but you could check to see who was online at any point on any system, unless it was locked down. You could just check. So there's a command where you could just put the username at whatever, and it would tell you if they were logged in. I mean, it was so unbelievable, and that all got closed down eventually. But Telnet was the way you kind of SSH'd in, right? That was sort of before SSH. You could use that, and you could make it send an email that looked like it came from anyone. And we actually did that for the Small World experiment with Perl. We didn't quite do that. It came from our email address, but we put the name, I think, the person's name. So we wanted them to feel like, it's shady for sure. Yeah, that was dangerous. So anyway, so I used this command, which I don't know what to say because it's such a sort of terrible name for it, but I just used it and the username, yeah, and then did some more whatever, and it's his twin, this guy's twin brother. It was his twin brother. So then I have to say, you have a twin. He's like, yes. Anyway, he's an Australian guy. He's an Australian. What's it? Yeah, we became good friends. Yeah. There's a whole lot of stuff with him. But anyway, super weird. The twin thing worked. Yeah, like anyway. My wife is a twin. She has a evil twin sisters. I've been watching Yellow Jackets to understand my wife better because she's from New Jersey. I don't think that's helping. Anyway, she's from a different time. Okay, so this sort of thing. So how do you measure? I don't know. This is just a really hard game. Like Trustpilot exists. It's a terrible looking website, to be honest. Like, does feel like it's out of date. Amazon, all these things. Like, how do we kind of get that back where you start to actually feel like you could trust a review anywhere? I don't know. Which is just reviews, but just sort of broader things. Like how you, yeah. So of course, we have a lot of laws in capital, like, because a lot of trust is just there by default, but people do bad things, and then hopefully they get caught, right? So, I don't know. That's a tough one. We have it in our words, so belief, right? Money is the encoding of beliefs, like credit cards, bank trusts, all these sorts of things. Yeah. All right, we talked about this. I will save that one because we're blathering along. Someone pointed this out to me on Twitter. I think this connects to I think this is I'm not sure if I want to play it. Good God. I think the story is that they just walk around and say, "Are you happy?" Should we risk looking at one of these?
I think they're pretty PG.
Okay.
Hi there.
Otherwise, I haven't looked at it.
Do you mind if I ask you a question for a documentary I'm filming?
What's that?
The volume 8 thing.
Question is, are you happy?
Well, right now I am. I just came out of here.
Do I need this?
So what makes you happy?
Well, just being outside, being in nature.
Is this trying to save me from
What makes you happy?
hearing TikToks?
Being outside talking to people.
I'd rather be out with the plants.
And if you were to give a message to the entire world?
It feels like the next question is like, would you like to join my cult? Right? It's really close. It's really close. Yeah. Okay. So that's a TikTok surveys. Someone can analyze that and find out what people are happy.
Pretty good API. I've seen some videos where like you can get like so much data out of it.
Well, we do stuff with text, simple-minded sort of person, but it's like there's a lot. But of course, video is gigantic.
I don't even know how you begin to analyze that stuff. And of course, like the social science coming out of China right now, it's got to be pretty good for, you know what I mean? Because they're just looking at all this data.
Yeah.
Pumping out.
Yeah.
Just crazy.
Yes. I don't know. Yes. Yeah. I mean, people have thought about it for a while, right? And it's just like, yeah. I don't know. I mean, I think if you had all I feel like we understand in a sort of deep way, like it's in parks, the contagious thing, and you just keep trying, and refine things. You could absolutely make it work, and they've done it. And I feel like the YouTube and Snap, they just kind of sat on things, and that's what got them into trouble. Of course, they're still big, so that's huge. Okay, I know I'm absolutely having a good time. All right, this one I know I mentioned, but it's like some of you guys are talking about Spotify. Oh my God, come on. Nope. Anyway, this might be interesting too, but it's basically and I'd like you want to see how they measure this, but it must be in the lyrics, I think.
Spotify has a
Oh, you're right. No, you're right, and that's what they say in here. They use Spotify score, yeah, and they have no idea how that works. Right. So that's something that comes to them. No, that's hidden. Yeah. All right. So, all right. Which, as a researcher, it's terrible, but also like, okay. I mean, I see why they did it. And you could check it. You could like, here are 1,000, put them on Mechanical Turk. How do you feel about it?
You do it with other metrics too, like some of their like parametric songs are like things you would use to describe like one note or like one chord.
I mean, that's sort of a famous thing, right? Like, I mean, minor keys and major, just like discordant, right? I mean, just like there's a cacophony, right? Interesting. Yeah. Minor keys. So, but their claim is it's the companies, the stocks do well. Yeah, the market outperforms. The national stock market does well. When people are listening to positive music.
We looked at 58,000 songs, 500 million streams of the song stuff.
It's I'm not going to say this is right. Like this just worries the hell out of me, but it's an interesting claim. And, I mean, look at the framing, it does say when. It is correlation. I mean, it does, but that's not how you could read that as a human, I don't think, generally speaking. This is like, now we will put more happy songs in, more music in the elevators, it's like,
Now artists have a get rich quick scheme and buy a bunch of stocks and use a bunch of happy music.
and it destroys happiness and the stock market because it, that's a social phenomenon. You become self-aware. Anyway, I just like if this is, it's a bit of a charming interview, I suppose. I don't. Anyway, it connects back to Music Lab and all that sort of stuff, but it's a big story. I mean, that's a big. Anyway, I don't know. There's an old paper which is really problematic, with the title "Twitter Predicts the Stock Market." I've never met. Anyway, they've done a bunch of things like this where that's the title. It should be colon a little bit, or like only on Wednesdays if it's raining and we did a funny thing, but it doesn't. And a bunch of companies got started, as far as I understand, with putting the tweets in one end and they're trying to get the money out the other end. Humans, right? And I don't think those companies are around anymore. I think you can feed a bit of tweets in, some social media. I think that's, that this would be a good thing to kind of into a big, ridiculous thing that tries to predict stuff.
At the CS fair, no shade for these students, but they trained in neural networks to predict whether a stock price will go up or down, and their accuracy was exactly 50%, which is good because like if it's less than 50%, just idiots there.
Well, I mean, people work really hard to like remove all that extra bit, like you just arbitrage everything out. High frequency trading just like mines it all out until it's you pick the structure, which is until you've got this random noise in it.
If you place a trade on like E-Trade or like Robinhood or something, they're selling like their market worth info to like some upstream company to like make the trading faster.
Yeah, because they managed trouble with that when they couldn't fulfill orders, which is the risk they're taking, and then they just pass that on to the consumer. Whatever, it's all bullshit.
Yeah, I have barely understand. Like it just always just absolutely makes me. From when I first went to college, my friends were doing economics and they showed me, here's a line. It's just what? I just don't. I can't believe any of it. Yeah.
It was the Diamond Hands era that they got in trouble, right? I was trying to remember why I would know about that at all, and that is why, because Diamond Hands.
Or like some company had a bunch of like options to buy or sell some company stock, and people like owned more stock than the company had options to. Or was it on the way around?
Are we talking about the meme stock? Yeah.
A
game. Is it GameStop? GameStop. Right. Which was like, no good, right? I mean, it used to be a store that.
I still believe.
You still believe? It was like Circuit. Was there like Circuit City or something? Like it kind of lost its.
No, I mean.
Right. Okay.
Symbol.
Yeah. Okay. Exists still. Okay. Good. Yeah. I mean, when these things happen, I don't. So. But of course, once it becomes aware, then you game that.
Oh, they're already. You
Right.
can't game it. Wall Street Bets is like gamed.
Yeah.
So like
It's
I
probably
think
50% bots.
I think it's actually a pretty good one to monitor because like I don't think it could change more from anything you like anything you fed into it. It would already have been trying to gamify that.
What is it in Pratchett? It's in one of his later books. There's some maniacal contraption in the basement of some, the university where they're trying to make a model of the economy. So it's got pipes and stuff. And it's actually in reference to a real thing called there was the Uniac or the ENIAC, but it was this, the British did it. It's like, this is great. If I've showed you this, I'm sorry. It's the ENIAC, computer, economy, the Maniac. Yes. Have I talked about this? This is fantastic. Okay, so the Maniac, New Zealander. So, New Zealanders are crazy. Again, the better version of Australians. So, so this guy's, Edmund Hillary's running up with Sherpa Tenzing up the top of Everest while this maniac's creating a model of the economy with fluids, with pipes and reservoirs and things, and it's solving differential equations, and because you could kind of make it do that. So there are levers that represent like, I don't know, what do they have in there? Tax rates, investment rates, could be set by entering, the valves which control the flow of water, right? So Pratchett sort of has a thing based on this. The trouble is it becomes entrained with the actual economy and starts to affect reality, which is always a problem.
Makes as much, if not more sense than anything else.
I think this was used until, it's a museum of science, but I think these fluid-based computers were used into the 80s. Like this was a whole, because for some computations, like modeling some differential, like partial differential equation, which is a horrible problem, you could actually manufacture it in some fluids kind of thing with some pipes. It's amazing. And it's still possible this would be the best thing to do. I mean, if you think about biology, of course, it doesn't have, we're running around doing computations with goo.
That'd be a good like side-by-side like fluid computation. Then it's like actually like fluid is moving a computer, and now it's like huge equations and matrices.
It's amazing. It's madness. Right. So it's one thing, it takes a while to make it, but you can imagine a much more matrix style situation, right? Yeah. That was a problem with the matrix, right? It was about energy usage, which doesn't seem.
That was how they changed it to make it more
about
understandable to yeah, it was supposed to.
If it's about computation, like if you're using distributed computation, that's very good. I mean, what is it, 30 watts for the brain? It's pretty good.
You know what would make a better battery than human? A battery. Or a potato.
I know. I remember seeing that for the first time at the time. It was all going well because it was the matrix.
Batteries to charge all the machines, but these are horrible batteries.
Really terrible. We can. The matrix. Like, wait, that was. Did they change that?
Maybe the machines had a different conception of what charging meant, but it includes computation.
Okay.
But if they put the computation in, it's totally legitimate. Like that's a big, because really rich. I mean, that's sort of plausible. But the energy thing was always like, come on, guys.
I guess I never.
Where he pulls out the boots, the things. Apparently, Village Roadshow is suing whoever, I guess Warner Brothers, because it didn't make the latest one didn't make enough money, right? Because they say it's because they released it on HBO Max and messed up the thing. It's not because it's crap, which is actually,
That was the Matrix giving you karma for calling it crap.
I'm sorry. Sorry, Matrix.
I love how Dune just assumes that like the Matrix already happened, that we somehow survived, and that we're just like no more computers.
It's post-Valerian jihad. So they had a lot of problems with computers, and there was a revolt.
Don't worry.
So they're banned now.
Anyway, Maniac. What a amazing. Wow. Wow.
You got the spice.
This is so great. Yeah. Oh, look. There you go. It's in making money.
But it's more valuable because they use it for the deep. Okay, sorry.
No. I
I'm like,
no. It's good. In fact, but I just want to say that Wikipedia has done the right thing. There you go.
Oh yeah.
Right. It got coupled with it was trying to simulate. So this is I mean, this is just a broader thing, but I was thinking about this the other day. You have models of things that you can predict, but then there's just maps, right? Maps help you navigate around something, but they don't explain the whole place, right? So yeah, so and there's this famous line, right? The map is not the territory. It's a beautiful statement to once again say, like, no great, no great man. Like the mapper is not the map is the other piece there. Anyway, yeah. So good art's law is like, as soon as you start making, right, when a measure becomes a target. This is good. And please, we could have named it after. We could just call it what it is. Ceases to be a good measure. People are very, 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 very clever at like actually maybe expending more energy to get the score they're trying to get, like cheating, like or whatever it is, because maybe it's just more fun or something, or they have control over it, Um, but yeah, so it's a hard one. It's again a hard one, but it's sort of an arms race problem. I interrupted you. What were you talking about?
we got distracted by Dune.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Talk about how there's no computers and everyone just take drugs to do crazy computation. That is the that. Yeah.
That's true. Right? Yeah. I actually never read that book. I did watch yeah,
Which one?
the most recent one. Again, with the riding a bike or something. So well, this is how I can consume these things. Very few things are couch worthy, by themselves. Uh, yeah, I don't know. Yeah. I'm not sure about Pearl June. Anyway, uh, it definitely has a Messiah story going on, right? Which is not
The second book is called Dude Messiah.
okay. Right, there are like 50 books out there or something, and it gets pretty weird out there. It's like tens.
Some of the end ones are not written by him.
Okay.
So
His son came in, right?
yeah. So
Some of them get a bit disturbing, don't they?
Well, they start disturbing.
Yeah, but like really,
Yeah.
yeah,
They're a little twisted, but
yeah,
the first couple are really good.
yeah. Let's have a white Messiah go into a desert.
Well, it's a little more complicated than
I
that.
know, but it did look great in the movie, I'm gonna say. Anyway, all right. Okay.
I can't believe the name there, Jesus Paul.
By the way, the baby names thing, the baby names thing, right? If someone says Susan, Susan's going to come in the door. You can kind of guess how old they'll be, right? Like you can if you sort of become familiar enough with baby names. Jessica, right, is the mom, which is Jennifer, which was in that baby names thing that I showed, right? Jennifer dominated the whole of the 70s, and then Jessica popped up. It's not really different. It's it's basically adjacent, but it is weird because he picked an ambient, very popular name of the time.
Wait, so what's
It'd be Aiden now or Braden.
He's like the Messiah. He goes by Muad'Dib, which is the name of the little desert mouse. So he has like
You mean?
and he has a Fremen name.
Did you refer to the giant worm as the little desert?
No, it's different. That's Shai Hulud.
Yeah. Oh.
We can, sorry, I didn't mean to derail,
I just think I haven't read the books. I need to. It sounds so cool.
they're good. They're really fun.
But there's a subset, right? Like you wouldn't read them all.
No,
Is that
I would
true?
read the first like two for sure.
Okay.
And
The
the rest-
Messiah one, is that it?
yeah.
Is that the second one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The rest depending on how you feel about it.
I mean, okay. I didn't shy away from it. Wasn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
An allegory. It's like no.
On purpose.
No, it's a. Oh, I see.
See the legends
Okay.
in order to control people.
Oh, that's
The
good.
stories are stories.
Okay, that's
Like the
good.
whole- Yeah.
That's good. So he isn't actually a.
No, he
Is he or isn't he?
Oh, okay.
It's a whole thing. Read the book.
No, spoiler.
I mean, you know, C.S. Lewis, right? Let's just have a.
yeah. That's pretty thinly veiled. Like supposedly it's not actually an analogy. It's just a parallel universe version of Jesus.
So it's a direct. Yeah, yeah,
Aslan
right.
is literally Jesus. He's not an analogy for Jesus.
Aslan is Jesus.
Yes.
Their Jesus is a lot more. He likes to talk a lot.
Hands-on.
Yeah, he's like, let's go, guys. I got this. I'm gonna lead you.
Well, no, he went away for a long time, and then there was the second coming when he came back.
Right, but then he stayed. And he came back a third time and a fourth time. There's so many movies. Read all the books.
Well, there are many. The books are quite different, right? I mean, there's a
Yeah, I don't know.
Piranesi. Have you read Piranesi? It's an interesting book. It's Susanna Clark who's wrote
Jonathan Strange, Mr. Norrell.
yeah, which is you know this kind of magical. I mean, it's a fantastic thing to read through. But Piranesi is a. I mean, it connects into to that world because there's a the White Witch is brought back is kind of a kid rings a bell basically, a nephew rings a bell, right?
That's in the Magician's Nephew.
Yes. So that happens and that wakes up the world. So it's linked into that, but it's a whole other space. It's quite, you know, bad things happen to graduate students actually.
I think the cool thing about that universe is you can link like any other universe you would want into it through that framework. Because there's like this whole place where there's a bunch of different parallel worlds. You can go into any of them.
That reminds me, you know that there's this thing for TV shows, right? Like all the TV shows that are supposedly in the same world. What is? I know I'm totally. I'm just like,
I know there's the Pixar theory. That's not what you're thinking.
what's that one?
That's where all the Pixar movies are in the same universe.
Same universe.
Which makes so much sense.
The problem is this is Saint Elsewhere, which I don't think any of us would have. Yeah, here we go. So there's Marvel, but this is this shared universe. This is people kind of made this up because you have people kind of you know cross over and appear in other shows. Wow. Saint Elsewhere, right? It's just that it was a hospital show or whatever. And the thing is, it ends, and it has this ending where there's a little kid, and who's holding a snow. Everything happened in his snow globe. Like so, it was all in this imagination. It's one of those endings that everyone hates because none of it was true. This is
That's real Tom Cruise, is it?
well,
Yeah, dude.
this
His
is
teeth
this.
are proper. Or wait.
Oh, and that's real Denzel Washington on that.
So, Community, Seinfeld, Person of Interest, Malcolm in the Middle, Married with Children, Arrow, all of Arrowverse. There's an argument for why the characters have, because it's a network story, right? There's enough characters have moved and being talked about. Because you just have to have a character say, I went to see, you know, Back to the Future. And they're in that, you know, like sort of in that world. And people have time on their hands. So it's the Tommy Westfall universe. Yeah, it's fantastic.
Is that Tom Cruise in that photo right there? I think that is. Yes. Yes.
No, because his tooth isn't centered.
What show is that?
This is Sin Elsewhere. I think this is this show which turned out to be all in the mind of a kid. Wow, 80s, 90s. Yeah, I don't think it is. Ed Begley Jr. is in it.
No, it's Mark Harmon. It's not Tom.
Yeah, you gotta look. Tom Cruise has a central tooth.
It is Mark Harmon, but it is Denzel.
This guy.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That's all right. Okay, I'm sorry. we're just talking about things. So this is the hedonometer, right, from way back in the day, and the idea was this. Trust, honestly, we've thought about trying to measure that. That is really hard, and it's just interesting to kind of look at where things are now. But we're taking our time here. As we'll see, this will get sort of deeper and deeper, but the basic thing was just pretty big to start with, was can we remotely sense emotional states, right? And so in a way that the people listening to happy music is, a version of this, right? That's an interesting way. There's all of this, sometimes called digital exhaust, right? People are, or just exhaust is a bit, that's one thing, but just people just put a lot of text out. They just tons of stuff, and of course with the advent of social media, gigantic, and which you guys all have your own personal feelings, but sort of the general, there was kind of a lot of like mockery, and still is, I suppose, but there was a lot of mockery of things like Twitter early on, and it's weird to see it appear in shows like Community when they sort of talk about it, or like when it appears, and same with like phones, I guess, but and how much impact it has. But anyway, so there's a sort of a lot of mockery about it, and one of them was it just people talk about what they ate for lunch, or basic boring things, stuff that they would probably talk about with other people. But on the other hand, that's great actually. Like this is just really this is we've had this sort of very sort of hierarchical structure where the only stuff that came out of that everyone read was curated through media and whatever it is. Books, these are hard things to put together, and they have to be disseminated. So now you've got this breaking of that all still happens, but now you've got this kind of slosh of stuff everywhere, to our potential doom, of course. But it kind of gave us the idea that maybe we could work with that data, and we've done all these experiments, or I've done experiments in the past, big online things. We're thinking about this before Twitter and Facebook. I don't know if I'd even heard of Twitter at that point. Facebook was around and people talked about it. It was taking off. But it wasn't, certainly wasn't, and still isn't, public data, but it was sort of getting there. The big thing at the time was just the web itself, and blogs in particular. That was a big piece. And bloggers would, you still see some relics of this. They would have their blog and they'd list all the other blogs that they read. And so you kind of had a nice network story. Power laws, of course. Anyway, but this was this idea, like maybe, we have things like Gallup poll for well-being. I've talked about those things. How can we sort of maybe gauge this in real time? And eventually, this turns into like trying to measure stories in real time and narratives in real time, which some people say they do. I don't know. But at least post hoc, right? We might be able to get some data from the past. I mean, I've pointed to this sort of endlessly, I suppose, with the pandemic. We can't measure death tolls in real time, right? But we can at least try to do this. It's 21 million now is the estimate by the Economist for excess deaths. Okay, but we want, these are things. We're trying to build an instrument, and it took a little while for the sort of framing of lexical instrument. That's what I call these things. So it is word-based. If we could feed in all the GIFs and the GIFs and the whatevers and the, that's a complicated, interesting thing. Anyway, but this is just text. So we want it to be this remains and has only, I think, gotten more important. This is because we're stupid people, right? We're just simple-minded folk. My work is kind of very blue-collar work, to be honest. I like that kind of frame. It's from a colleague, but it's like basic stuff. Like you have to be able to understand it, even if it's a little messy. We want things that we're sort of worried about black boxes. So we want it to be, explainable, even if it's a bit tricky. We don't want it to be like inside some black box and you just say the thing did it. And we realize there are incredible powers in black boxes, but we were in trouble. We needed to be fast because we're thinking about web scale, which of course has only gotten bigger. Written expression, because words are fun, and there are lots of words, and maybe we should be able to do something with words. Uses human evaluation, and I know I sort of jumped through into some of this stuff before, but users, we need to have this. So we don't want to like take people out of the loop here, right? Um, anywhere I think it's well, I mean, obviously, well, we'll see, but you know, this is all before the great sort of deep learning and AI kind of things exploded. It was back in the day where computers were hilariously bad at identifying things in images, you know, like, right, and then Facebook decided it needed to know which people are standing next to you in the photo so they can, you know, target them as well, and things exploded. But you know, so it's definitely in a time where AI is really struggling, and neural networks are like 80s style. What's going on? Non-reactive. This means we're not interviewing. We're not walking up with a "I'm from TikTok" saying "How happy are you?" kind of situation. It's another way of saying we are watching you covertly. I mean, there are different ways to express this, but you can see this is the psychology term to make it sound sciencey and okay. But in fact, is you know, this is a bit of darkness in this one. But it's what it is remote sensing, right? Again, that should have some sinister overtones, but it is, you know, it's like we're trying to look at the population as a whole, and of course, this has been done with economic measures and all sorts of other social measures forever. We want to be complementary to self-reported measures, so we kind of sort of make it clear that we're not trying to wipe those things out. They're important, have to have surveys. And then improvable, and this has been, I think, one of the most surprising things, apart from the fact that we made anything that works at all, right? We did try some off-the-shelf stuff just to see if we get anything. There was Opinion Finder, and maybe I have it on slide, was one I remember trying. A couple of others, and we sort of fed all these blog data, you know, sentences through it, and they were pretty terrible, right? So it's just like there's this big timeline from a blog. Obviously, some years have gone by, but not the sort of score that we get out of positive and negative words, or positive and negative opinions was what I was trying to say, was just flat. Anyway, so I know I've probably got this in here. Yeah, so we do. This. I mean, this sort of holds up. I used to have this slide a lot, but I take it. I mean, we sort of are here, right? So this is the science, is the watching, you know, this is a bit of sinister kind of thing. And then the policy that comes out, let's make people happier, which, you know, is what you're going to do with the figuring out that people listening to happy music makes more money. You know, let's inject the happiness. Yeah, I mean, we can have both. It's often stated as an either-or situation, but I think we can totally have both. Yeah, it's good. Yeah, I mean, think of all of sports, all of music. That's yeah. So there are some efforts to do this. This is an old one, a very old one now, but this is 2008. This is Facebook did talk to us about what we were doing. They couldn't implement it, I think. I don't know, there were some funny discussions there. But this is like some, you know, I don't know what this is. This is a sentiment score for Democrats. Maybe it's positive, negative words, which is interestingly above 50%. Not quite sure what that, I don't know what went into this. Yeah. So you can see down here. So I'm going to say this is a disaster, right? Percentage of posts that are positive versus negative. Posts are too small to do this. I mean, you could read it and say this is positive. Like you could farm it out to people, sure. But if you're doing sort of simple word scoring, probably hard. Maybe there's some fantastic elaborate black box thing that can do it all and pick up sarcasm, but I don't know. Emojis help a little bit, actually. They really have helped a little bit with that. Anyway, so this is, you know, I don't think it's interesting to look at this again. There is a positivity bias here. And this is about Democrats. This is just topic is Democrats. I don't know how they got that. This is, which year is weird? So 2008, this is going up towards the election. Right, so they're trying to do something there, but they abandoned all of this. This is, again, emotional content. So this is sentiments. This is again from Facebook. This is for Palin, who was the giant story, you know, in 2008, right when. Apparently the quote is now, I saw it the other day, that and I don't much as swearing is my vernacular, this is a quote, but it's something like, they're trying to convince McCain to do it, and he just eventually just said, he turned to his wife, I think, and said, "What do you think?" She's like, and he said, "Fuck it, let's do it." And that was a real, flip in what's happened in the world. Anyway, so this is going down through that time. That's going down. Maybe it was super positive to start with. Complete unknown, absolutely unknown at the start, and so there was just sort of the usual thing where, well, you don't know where you. So it's positive or negative, just plus or minus one, right? You could say, greatest person in the world, kind of an okay person. They're both plus ones, right? So, I like Sarah Palin, right? So both plus ones. Obviously there's some scale there. I think overall, it's to get a rough thing, it's okay to do that. These are both plus ones. You will still kind of, and there's sort of a deeper thing here, is basically this positive negative balance is enough. And so I still don't know really how they did that. But so here was the idea. So we've tried a bunch of things. So we're going to build on the, we start with individual words in isolation. Problematic in itself, right? Because words have potentially many meanings, but they do have meanings typically in the sort of skewed distribution, the Zipf kind of thing. Like there's the most common meaning, the next most common meaning, and they tend to kind of decay. So there's seen in isolations, words tend to kind of, if you ask someone, they will tend to go with the main meaning. Obviously some variation across people, but you'll get the basic thing. And I know I've said this, but I think run is the word that has the most meanings in the OED now. It used to be set when I was a kid, but it's like 1,000 meanings, That right out here, it's going to be this kind of typical Zip thing. Half of them are going to be super rare, right? So Osgood, who we will come back to. Osgood, there's a book by Osgood, which eventually came to, and born on Amazon, I guess. Really, this is an interesting thing. I will show you later on that the first work that goes before this is the pings of submarines, trying to understand what people working with radar, how they felt about the sonar coming from radar, how they felt about it, like danger, things are okay. Like what was this? So it's a weird thing because it's submarines, naval warfare, essential meaning, and then semantic differentials, which is a measurement instrument was sort of a new put together. So this is I don't know, I've talked about this, but it's just, we hopefully I wanted to jump forward to the word shift so you had something to work on. Oh, which is in the next assignment, which exists. It's number 18 in our poorly numbered, strangely numbered thing. Anyway, so no, it all makes sense. So we will come back and really, really look at this. But at the time, this was, especially as me reading this literature, and this is work with Danforth at the time, like this is kind of really baked in. People are really, like this, there is this idea of 3 dimensions of meaning, and it's valence, bad, good, arousal, it's a terrible term, passive, active. So this is sometimes called activity. There's also pleasure, arousal, dominance. It's written like that. Valence is useful because it doesn't tell you about the ends, right? It's agnostic to that. This is like goes from sort of a 0 to high, and then dominance is weak to strong.
I was going to say, for the homework for the second part, you want us to like get rid of words that are within some tolerance. Plotting those, we want those all in the same chapter because they're going to be of varying lengths depending on which.
When you get rid of those words, it will tend to inflate the average score of the time series. So you could in principle put them all in one plot because they're all going to just like drift up. And I'll show you a plot of that. Maybe I'm not answering the right question. What is it?
I think you are.
You could have them like boop, 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 like this.
The x-axes are all different for each. Not for the. Like,
The y-axis will be different.
So
so you have a window, right? So you're going to score all the words in this window. Let's say it's 100,000 words, right? You have a lens, so you have words and you have scores for them. And I know you've sort of seen this. I'm sorry, I'm just so good. And if you have 30% of these words you have scores for, you do that. And then in the middle of that window is like that's an average score of the thing. If you change your lens, so now, it's just a different lens, and you score 70% of them, and maybe it's a different thing you're scoring, then same game, you just score the ones you have measures for, ignore the ones you don't, and then there's an average value that goes, it's in the center of that window. So that this narrative time, or whatever's going along the bottom, so for instance, like maybe a simple thing is like Twitter, like you just have all the words on one day for Twitter, you score it, plot it for that day. As you change the lens, you still have a score for each day. There's no change in that. It's a horizontal thing. Ask me a different way. What do you mean?
I guess like there'll be different numbers of words for each lens.
Yes.
Right? So
Which is another thing to plot.
Instead of like the window size or the window number, do like it's this many words into the text.
Oh.
And that way you can put them all on the same graph.
I see what you mean. I think I'm trying to say that. So here's your text. Here's Moby Dick written out, just in, let's use the Vonnegut notation, beginning, end, right? It's great. What is it? He's what's his thing this way? It's good fortune and ill fortune, right? Yeah. Right. So good fortune and ill fortune, which we translated into happiness and sadness. So you take the first 1,000 words, right? And maybe you have scores for you've got these, and then you get an average for it, and you put it here, and then I like just sliding across to 1,001. You get some average, you put it there. Doesn't matter how many you get in here. Like if your lens only gets 10% of these or 30% of these. So another plot is like this. It's like, what percentage coverage, right? This is a terrible plot. It goes up to 100. As you go through, like how many words you scoring in each bin. This will go down as you make the lens smaller. Like as you cut out more words in the middle. Your lens is smaller, so you have to get at least you'll hit fewer words. So it's not that you take it's not that you take 1,000 words that you have scores for. You take 1,000 words, and there's like the and
Oh yeah.
Connecticut you don't have a score for.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think
It's a one. I believe the word means mistake, but yeah. Or keep going. Oh yeah. You escape. Oh, you're from. Okay, yeah. There are a number of people who do that. They go to. Yeah. It's fair enough. I know it took a. Jace, what do you think? This.
That all makes sense. It's more about like
What am I doing?
We got it. We started it out.
Yeah, it's like if you lens, that's like.
I won't make it. I could make it worse.
Your first lens is like plus or minus 0.5. Your next lens is like plus or minus 1. So that means everything 5.5 to 4.5 is thrown out.
Yeah.
6 to 4 is thrown out.
Yeah.
So there's different kinds of words.
Yes.
How do you like equally like plot those? And Julie suggested just looking at the midpoint.
They're just right. You can take out the average if you want, but I think it's actually good to just plot whatever you get from that lens, because what you're going to see is it's going to drift up, and there's a reason for that.
Oh, but I guess it also, you could argue you can just plot it from the see them.
Just plot it. You'll see it. Yeah. But they will drift up because there are more positive words than negative words. And it's skewed that way. If it was a symmetric distribution, you know, it depends. So there's, again, it's like the types and tokens thing, which I need to frame out properly in Parks, I realize, but you know, the types of the individual, the words in the dictionary, and then the tokens of the instances. So again, something we'll confront around. But there's this idea of 3 dimensions, and I'll just talk about it a little bit more. The way this was sort of, it's been debated a lot, and I spent last year sort of going back through this. You know, what these are actually called, and this is actually not from Osgood, so I should be clear about this. This is Mehrabian and Russell in the 80s came along and said, we want to use this framework of Osgood, which was about essential meaning. We want to take it across to emotional responses. And so in Osgood, and the reason I have it is because we're working on emotion, and I'm going to repeat this a lot, but Osgood, their story they came up with was evaluation. So that's what this is. Like, you're evaluating something. Is it good or bad? And you can see there's you know, we do it, but, you know, down to amoebas, right? Like, this is a really primitive feature of a you know, like algorithmic response to something in your environment, called this activation, and this was potency. So that's so you sometimes see that, and it's EPA, it's the other way around. So all these are flipped. So it's evaluation, potency, and activation. So I don't know why, but they took it across and they just decided to give it more psychological feeling kind of terms. And yes, right, sorry. I can't even read what I'm saying. But this is, I've got it around the wrong way, because this is really what Osgood said this, and then this was transported across. I should fix that. It took me a long time to figure that out. Honestly, there are papers that try to understand whether this and these things are the same. Like, decades later, people get so lost in what's happened, as far as I can tell, that they want to see if asking these questions, people along the lines of these questions, is the same as this. Whereas it was, you know, a direct translation. I mean, the intention of the original authors was to say, we're just going to give it a different name. So the big problem becomes, like, how do you tell someone what these endpoints are? How do you explain to them what the endpoints of activity and evaluation are? It's something we'll kind of come back to, like at one end and this end. And I know I've talked about it, but really weird. They try to get Plato involved as well. Okay, so you guys are working on this, but it's just to say again, it is this. I know I had it stuff, but it's the effective norms for English words. It's the weird paper. We've looked through this, and it's exactly this problem. So, but just to sort of bring that back again, this is a valence thing for expectation. It's sort of the same thing, but you have to explain to people, you have to kind of orient them in this meaning space. And it is tricky, and we'll really deal with this when we get to osiometrics, which is what we're calling essential meaning measurement. But these are not really, you know, these are not all the same thing, right? I mean, at all. I mean, happy, contented, you know, they're similar, but they're, you know, and bored and unhappy are very different states. I mean, you can be bored and unhappy, right? Okay, we talked about those. Yeah. All right. So that's the game. We're just doing this average thing, and I you know, I did introduce all this before. So we can sort of move into this again properly on Thursday. But how do we feel about this measurement thing? Giving you a few things to work with. It's really simple. Word shifts are a little, you know, little messing around, right? I know we do the list. You know, the word shift thing, which is in your first assignment. Second. You know, it's we're not doing general relativity, but it's just some deftness, I suppose, some handling things with care and being able to work with it. And I know we did all this. Yeah. Okay, so All right. I know we've hit time. So we're going to be in another room. It's going to be 407, which is weird. But apparently we'll make other people happy. Best of all, we'll make some professors happy because we really need to look after those people. Yeah, they're really special. You can tell I think they're the worst people. Anyway, so all right, but we'll talk about some more origins and things. Okay, good. All right. Yeah. TikTok time.